Today we're going to look at how to sew the hair on Naruto. Check out my previous video for how to make spiky hair for Amigurumi. In that video I show you how to make these strands like this. For Naruto I did about 5 of those strands plus a shorter strand that goes around the back. Now I know Naruto's hair looks a little funky. That's because I had to leave room for the headband. When you're doing it, if you're not putting something like a headband here, if you're just using it for any other doll, you probably want to go down further along his hairline and then have some of the pieces fold forward a little bit or sew them more downward. So to begin, I find it easier to start when their head isn't completely finished. So when we're sewing the hair on, we can just go in and out with the needle. So I have my strand of triangles here. If you saw my previous video, I left a long tail. So I just put my needle on there. And I'm going to start in the center of the head and just poke that through. Now I'm basically going to turn this into a spiral following the spiral of his head. So I'll come back up pretty close through here. And then that extra loop that was created during the triangles, that's what I'm going to go through. Okay. And then I'm just going to keep kind of shaping this around in a spiral. So I'll go down. Kind of move this where I want. I can go down a few stitches. And then position this where I want. Go up through there. And continue to work my way around. Okay, now you see I've gotten the first kind of way around. Now I'm going to start on the next spiral. I don't want them to be too close together. That will end up being too tight and the spikes won't be clear. So make sure you leave about a row space in between. Because they're kind of floppy, it won't be visible in the final version. So kind of position this around. And this is also why I didn't want such a long strand and made several strands instead. So you can kind of position it without having a long piece that you're working around. But if that doesn't bother you, then by all means make a longer one. So I like to kind of see where I want to be and then use that to judge where to bring the needle up. Okay, and then kind of position that. And keep pulling that through. I'm kind of jumping ahead so you'll see it at different stages. You see I just keep going around in a spiral and I'm coming up, you know, like every 3 or 4 stitches and about a row apart. When I'll come up. And then I will stitch that on. And the nice thing about having it with your head not finished is that it will be easy to undo if you make a mistake. So you can just poke that in there. Okay, I'm going to pause now, and the next you'll see is when I have to attach another strand and what that will look like. Okay, you can see here I finished off that first strand, and it actually got pretty far working in a spiral. There are gaps, but you don't really see them with the spikes in the hair kind of flopping over. And then when I got to the end of that spiral, I just tied it off. The nice thing about working with the head not finished is I can just leave the ends kind of dangling on the inside. Now I have another strand, and I put my needle on the tail of that, and I'm just gonna poke it in right in the same spot where I left off the last strand. And what's gonna happen is you're not gonna really notice that there's any gap at all. It's just gonna continue around. And I'll do as I did before, poking up a few stitches down. I don't want it to be double, I just pull that tail. And then kind of gauge where that should end up on the hair. Put the needle through. You see, I'm just going to continue working that around. And I'm going to work that around, and you can see on Naruto's hair it actually ends up pretty tight looking, but still spiky. Like I said, I ended his a little bit high on his hairline because he has this headband that goes over it. But on another doll, you would probably want to go a little bit lower. You can also make shorter strands. He has a shorter strand because that will stick out below his headband. So if you need some pieces that go down below, just like that. And you're going to continue around until you feel like you have enough of those and you got spiky hair for your amigurumi doll.